Welcome back. Stasa23 here, back again with some knife therapy. And today I have for you my 5 knife pet peeves. Some of these could be deal breakers, just things that absolutely drive me crazy, especially with how far knives have progressed. Let's get started. First off, my number one is a poor flipper design or thumb stud. And what I mean by that is, and don't take this, as I not like the knife. I could still like the knife, but first off, we got the Hinder XM18, that flipper tab. And this is a pet peeve for me. You might not care, but that pokey spot right there where you flip it, because I can't, it's very hard for me to flip it like that, and that's still uncomfortable. Not only does it have that pokey flipper tab, but when you're coming down right here, you also have a pad of jimping to land on. They have made it a little bit better. And this was also an issue back in the day when I picked up this one. This jimping back here is absolutely a finger destroyer. That's some sharp stuff. And I understand why they did it here, because that's where your thumb lands. But they could have made that, finer or something to where you wouldn't rip up your fingers every time. This is an older model knife though. And like I said, on this one, that flipper tab, anytime that flipper tab's pointed, in a pokey spot or just uncomfortable in general, it drives me crazy. And then the thumb stud, another quick example, is on this Best Tech sledgehammer. It's just that sharp right there. The detent on my particular one is pretty darn strong. And the way you got to flip this knife, you got to flip it a certain way. If I don't hit it the right way, that rips my finger to pieces. The Benchmade Mini Adamas kind of did that to me, but not really, because the axis lock is a lot easier to break. But on a stronger detent, that right there, my hands, I've already seen enough damage. A sharp thumb stud is not going to help. And same goes with a front flipper. A lot of times when you have those front flippers that are just straight up like that, and it has a strong detent, and dragging my hand across there, if I don't break the detent, it just rips the skin on the hand. That's never fun and enjoyable to use my knife. All right, number 2, poor lock access or severe lock tension. And I hate to pick on this knife like this. I got 2 of them, 2 examples, but the first one is this Medford Slim Praetorian. What I mean by poor lock access, as you can see, the show side and the lock side are completely flush. Now, he did add this cutout right there, but that leaves a hard edge right here. And this thing has so much lock tension, it's almost like, and I've used this thing a good bit, and I've literally taken a pry bar and pulled it back to try to lessen up that lock bar tension. I don't know what he does. He must superheat that right there and bend it a good bit. But still enjoy the knife. It hasn't been a deal breaker yet. It is pretty darn uncomfortable to get. I'm not even doing it right now. I got to use the fat of my thumb. And usually when I got to use the fat of my thumb is because there's too much lock bar tension, or it's so uncomfortable. I can't really do it with my thumb pushing over this way. I don't know if they're all like this. Was one of the first few that actually came out, so maybe he's fixed that. I don't know. I know he's known for having a lot of lock bar tension because they're hard to use knives. This one, not so much. This one is, in that EDC realm. You got a nice deep hollow grind, things that you wouldn't really need on an EDC knife. Another one that that is an offender but is now been fixed. This is the Tucson. I can't think of the name. If I think about it, I'll put the number up here. This is a Tepe design, and this was one of the original ones. And as you can see, the lock face is also flush with the show side scale. And on my particular one, there's no chamfer right there, so it's pretty hard to, like, if you use your thumb, it's hard to get that thing pushed over, and it's uncomfortable because of that hard edge. But now they've put a chamfer in there to make it a lot easier. So awesome. Always love when a company, corrects, problems with the knife. So that is my number 2. And number 3. Now this one could be a deal breaker for me. Sometimes it is. And that is Detent rock or slash slip and a lock slash lock slip. But let's get into the Detent rock and or slip. That's basically, and I'm just saying both ways. It's basically in this knife right here. This is another Tucson, and I'll put the number up here. This one, it's not really, I'm not going to consider it this knife fault because I did modify the knife by putting my anno finish on there. So I could have done something to the tolerances on this one. So that being said, this is what Detent rock is. See, when the knife is locked up, that detent ball is just going back and forth in that hole. And usually it's because the detent hole is gotten bigger and it's too wide now. So that detent ball is sitting in that hole, banging on both sides. And that drives me crazy. I don't know if y'all can hear that through the camera. Sometimes you can fix it, and somebody said it on the Knees channel last night by turning the stop pin around or turning it, because sometimes it could be a flat spot in that stop pin, or the stop pin might be wider on one side, and sometimes all it is pushing that, like in the closed position, that is, and all that is that when it hits that stop pin, and depending on where it's at, it might hit the stop pin and the blade might only come down right there. And there you go. You have a tight lockup. You have a tight, you don't have any rattle anymore. So not always a fix, but sometimes that can fix the issue. I have seen it happen before. And this next one, now this is usually a deal breaker for me. It's still on the number 3. You have the Detent rock and slip or the lock rock and slip. Okay, now this is an example of a lock rock, and once again, this is not this knife's fault. I modified it, but it's I'll tell you why after. But listen to this. Wait, hold on. So basically, what's happening right here is the blade has movement. The lock bar is not. It's not. Here's the tang of the blade, and the lock bar comes over, and it's sitting like right here. So whenever it rocks, it's hitting that, and it's hitting that like that. There's usually ways to fix it. I can usually put lock bar pressure in this direction, put a little bit more, like bend the lock bar over a little bit more that way, and that'll usually solve the problem. If it's titanium on steel, I usually carbonize the lock face, and sometimes I'll carbonize underneath the tang of the blade to give it that extra little bit of material to come in contact with. I'll show y'all a knife I did that to the other day. But that is lock rock, where that blade is hitting back and forth on that lock, and that's usually something you can fix. Another one that I experienced severe lock rock with was this hunk of junk DPX gear Hest. This is one of the older ones. I don't know if I don't even know if this is 6AL4V titanium, because I know for a fact they left the lock face completely raw. It's not carburized or carbonized, and it definitely doesn't have an insert. But you can see the lockup right there, because I had to bend it that away, and it still had a little bit of lock rock. I don't think I have any right now. Then after I bent it as far as I could that away, I carbonized the lock face, and see if you can see it. I also carbonized the tang of the blade. It's hard to see that. At the edge of that blade, I put a layer of tungsten carbide on there. That way it had a little bit more meat to mate. And I did fix the problem as of now. But this thing was so soft at the lock face that there is a big chunk almost missing out on the corner right there because of how soft. Whenever it's contacting this hardened steel, it was just curling it over. Like it was pretty bad. So yeah, this knife this thing's been in the collection for a while, and I've used it. I haven't super abused it. I kind of started abusing it whenever it had the lock rock, just because I didn't care anymore. But I don't even know why it stuck around. I think it's because it's one of my first, higher end purchases a long time ago. Okay, and lock slip is a completely different thing than lock rock. This particular knife, when I had first got it, had really bad lock slip. And what that is the geometry on the tang. Okay, you got your lock. Okay, let's see it. Yeah, like this. Okay, this is the tang of I'm exaggerating it, but this is the tang of the blade. And then the lock comes in and hits it like this, okay? If it's too steep, or this area right here is polished, whenever you put pressure on the blade up here, you put pressure down, it slides this way. It's not mating and it's not contacting because there's too much of a slope. Now, like I said, I'm exaggerating this. The geometry is usually off, or like on my Tour Knives Merchant, the tang of the blade right here, and you can see that. Look, see how polished that is? You can see that shininess right there. Well, that polished is very slippery, and especially when you have titanium, which is a softer material, on steel, that pressure like that, if both of them have polished themselves up, when you put that pressure and it's too much of an angle, it's just going to slide back this way, which the way I was able to fix it, and this, probably avoid your warranty. Usually just send your knife back if you have a warranty on your knife. But one way to fix it is take a little strip of sandpaper that is, I don't know, say 800 grit, and slide the lock like this, slide the sandpaper in there, let that go, and then once it's kind of locked up, you pull that sandpaper like this while pushing the lock over right there, and basically you're just sanding just the edge of that enough to where it'll slide over a little bit more, or it'll create a rougher surface. That's what I did with this one. And also, you can, this doesn't always work, but sometimes you can spine whack it and it'll mar up that face. I don't recommend that though. So there you go. That's the lock slip. All right, number 4, and this one drives me insane, is a super tight pocket clip. Either it's hard to even lift the clip to get it over the pocket, or it just doesn't have any space. This Cherbakov small Swift has a severely tight, I can't even lift this thing up any, because it's such a thick slab of titanium, which is hard to see because they have that bevel right there, but that's a pretty thick piece right there. So it doesn't want to bend, there's no movement. Only way I'm probably going to remedy this is put some relief lines underneath the clip right back here to try to let it, kind of like a lock, how they put a lock relief on a titanium frame lock, kind of like this, except the lines like you see on some of the knives. So this one has a super tight pocket clip. Now this one is an offender of both, and this is this Buck Mini Spitfire. It's a pretty cool little knife. This one I will be reviewing here soon, but you will get one of my nitpicks and complaints right off the back. And look at that. Okay, first off, you got no room under that pocket clip. I mean, no, I couldn't even fit this in my thin, lightweight shorts that I have on right now. And then plus, on top of that, this thing is super, super tight. So if you're able to get it, like I was able to get it about this far right here in the pocket. So that's just aggravating. The only good thing is nowadays, you know, they make so many aftermarket clips, and that right there looks like either a Benchmade or a Spyderco 3-hole pattern. I'm not sure. I know my Buck 110 Select has the same Spyderco pattern, so hopefully that's what that is, and I'll be able to change it. Some people, you know, I understand if you don't want to deal with that, you just sell the knife. I mean, a lot of these I keep for the channel. That's usually why they're still around. But that's my number 4 pet peeve. And number 5, Ergo's not designed for a human being. Unfortunately, I don't have any, I'm going to start putting some of the knives that were in this. I don't have any examples for you on that one because that is an absolute deal breaker. I mean, if it's so uncomfortable that I can't use a knife, then I have no use for it whatsoever, because I enjoy using my knives, and that is an absolute deal breaker for me. That, I guess, would say my number 1 pet peeve is ergonomics that are designed for, I don't know, a sloth. I don't know. I was trying to think of something that would have some weird mitts on them. So we'll go right back over them real quick for all my awesome people who are still here. Number 1 was poorly designed flipper tab and thumb stud. You know, the uncomfortable flipper tab or jumping behind the flipper tab, sharp thumb stud with a tight detent, and front flipper that the front flipper goes straight up the side and it's sharp and the detent's strong. That, you know, that's a big old pet peeve of mine. Number 2 was the poor lock access and severe lock tension. You know, this one's a offender of both. Then you have the detent rock and slip. That's this. And you know, that is very annoying because it's not something I can easily fix most of the time. So that's usually a deal breaker. I think this is the only knife that I currently have that has that, and I think I may be able to fix this one. And then also, of course, the lock rock and lock slip. Lock rock is usually not a deal breaker completely for me because I can usually fix that. But the lock slip, if I can't get that under control, it's either going back or being sold. And of course, I would let the person know that. Sold at a discount. And then, of course, the super tight pocket clips, you know, no space underneath, or the retention's so tight I can't even get it over a pocket. And Ergo's not designed for a human being. So there you go. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. If y'all want to see a part 2 of this video on what makes up my perfect knife, y'all let me know down in the comments. I plan on doing that anyway, but if a bunch of y'all, nobody says anything about it, then I might not upload it. So there you go. I hope everybody's having an absolute wonderful day. I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.